Hello, and welcome to Michell Consulting's webinar series for our Michell University. Today we're going to be talking about Infor FACTS and a physical inventory. For the purpose of the demo today, we're using FACTS 7.7 for our demo, and we're going to talk about the physical inventory process within FACTS. So let's begin. Let's go into our inventory control. And let's go into our file maintenance. In frequent file maintenance, static control, and let's look at some of the setups. Here in our static control, we have a tab for our physical inventory. This is going to determine such things as our count sheets and how we determine what inventory we want to look at and what we want to count. So here is our physical inventory. The order in which we're going to print our count sheets. We can do it by item, by the alpha, by a vendor code, by an item class, by the location, which is the bin location, and also by a movement class. So we're going to stick with the bin location for purpose of the demo. Items included. Again, we have an option. We can only take items that are in the primary location within the range chosen, or we can take it all locations within the range chosen. Again, items, as we know, we can have a bin location, a primary bin location, and also secondary bin locations. Here we have our physical quantity count. What do we want to show? We can use the on-hand, which is the physical inventory within the location or in the warehouse, or the available. The available takes into consideration committed quantities and so on. We're going to stay with the on-hand quantity, again, for purposes of this demo. And count exceptions only. So we'll leave that open so we can see everything. So let's exit here. So let's go to our inventory control, and let's go into our physical inventory. So the first thing we have in the process of doing this, we have our count sheets. This will allow us to print a copy that we can use to actually count and take inventory. We have our capture quantities. What the capture quantity will do is we'll take a snapshot of the inventory at time of printing the count sheets, or right after you print the count sheets. The main purpose of this, and this is very critical when you do the physical, because you want to print your count sheets and you want to count the inventory when you're not doing any operational flow. Typically, if you can shut the business down, we want to do our counts. But what happens is people can count the inventory maybe in a day, but it may take 3 or 4 days to actually enter that information into the system. Therefore, we don't want to stop the business process for 3 or 4 days while we're entering. The capture quantity will take a snapshot of the quantity on hand at the time you run the program. Then, after you entered all your counts and you run your update, FACTS takes into consideration what was sold. So in the example of you had 10 on hand at the time you counted, and you counted 9, which means that's a reduction of 1, but by the time you go in and enter and update that count, you sold 3. So now your on hand is 7. What FACTS will do, instead of taking 1 away from the 7 and making it 6, it'll remember that there was 10, and we took 1 away from the 10, which makes it 9, so it'll take 1 away from the amount and do it correctly. So instead of putting 9 as the physical quantity, it'll look at the 7 that I have now and take 1 away from the 7. So make the 7 equal to 6, as opposed to just saying we counted 9 and putting the 9 in. So let's take a look. Let's go to our print count sheets. And again, you can see that the order here is already set up. I can't change this. That's what I set up in my infrequent file maintenance under my static control. What I can do is within standard FACTS, we can create a template. So if we want to create a certain template to run this, we can do it. Here we're going to go and look at all locations. Again, we have our types here. You want to print stocked items or non-stock. In this case, we're going to do both. Again, we're going to select our warehouse. What we want to see, in this case, we can see description 1, description 2, or both. We can enter a cutoff date. For the purpose of the demo, we're using this date, but we can also put a cutoff date. We can see the on-hand if we wish. or we can see the amount of blank lines we want to skip in between. So let's run a few and see the difference. We're going to run it without the on-hand quantity. And this is typically run for the people that are actually doing the count in the warehouse, because on this count sheet, we don't want to show the actual amount that the quantity on hand is. We want the person to accurately count. We can see here we have the item numbers, we have our descriptions, we have our bin locations, and we have our counts. So we can look at it here. If we go and let's make a change to that, and here you have the option of capturing the quantity at this moment. We're going to say no. We don't want to capture quantity at this moment. Go back. So let's actually show the on-hand, and let's skip a line. I'm going to add a blank line. We can see the difference here. That we've just skipped the line in between, and we've shown our actual on-hand quantity. A lot of times what people do is we print two copies. We print a control copy, which is something like this with the on-hand, maybe to check off to see the difference as we're counting them. We may print the first copy without the on-hand for the actual people in the warehouse counting. So we can have the option to do two. But for an example, let's go through and let's actually do a sample. We're going to go and we're going to start with bin location A47, and we'll go to A85. So we'll take these little range here so we can see how this works. So let's close that. I'm going to say no to the capture. And again, we could capture now at time of doing the count sheet, or we can just go here and we can run the capture program here. I'm just going to go ahead and capture when I print the count sheets, but you can also just do the capture at this point right here. Let's print the count sheet. Let's put in our A47 to our A85. You can see here we have our counts. So when we look at these items, so we have here item 132, 109, and we have the 101. So we're going to go ahead and close that. We're going to say yes to the capture. So what we're doing is we're storing the quantity on hand, as you saw right now in the system. And that's there. Again, that could have been run from here if we wish. If there are any problems, we can actually clear the capture quantity. So let's say we ran this and we realized that we weren't ready to do the inventory. We needed to wait till next week. We can go clear the captured quantities, and we can go back and start the process again. Let's go right here to the enter counts. So again, our screen's going to come up. Again, you see that we're dealing with warehouse 1. Here we have our types of items, so we're just going to look at all items. And you can see that our first item came up automatically. We're going through the count, so we can see here that the captured quantity was 1. Let's go here, and let's say that we counted 2. We see our next item, I-109. You can see the captured quantity is 5. Let's go ahead and count all 5. And we can see here that our other item, 101, we can see here that a captured quantity was 13, and let's say we had 11. Okay, so you can see we've gone through all our items. We can add additional items if we wish. In this case, we're just going to keep the items we have. Let's do this last location. And here we can see the items. We have to make any changes to them. If we wish, we're going to go ahead and say done and done. So you can see we've entered our counts. We can now go and print our discrepancy report. So again, here we're going to look at, we can do a specific location range if we wish. We're going to go ahead and do everything that we've done here. I'm going to click OK. We can go here and look at our report. And you can see here what we have. We can see here that we captured one. This is our physical. This is what we captured. Discrepancy. We had nothing. We captured this. So we have these two items. If we go back and run it, we're looking at the discrepancies only. If we go back and run it now, and we take this off, because we want to look at everything, instead of just looking at discrepancy only, we now see our item. So we have that option of going in and looking at discrepancies only between what the physical was and what we captured. We also, and we can print it for just discrepancies or everything. And again, it's going to show our cost and our information. So we've made a change here. So what we've counted was our new item 32. We captured 1 and we counted 2. For our item 109, we counted 5, which is what we had, and then we counted 11 for our other one, which is the physical. So now we would go in, we'd run our update. And again, we have the option here of running it. We're setting up by default. So what we're doing is the days to next inventory. We set it to 90 days. What's going to happen is next time we count inventory on these items, they're going to come up on this specific day. We can change this. We can make it 10 days or 30 days, whatever you'd like. And it's going to pick up the information. I'm going to run the update. We're going to say yes to update. And we can see that we updated 3 records. If we go to our inquiry screen, item inquiries, and we call up our first item. Again, you can see here now the quantity on hand is 2. If we look at our ledger card, you can see the adjustment. So we're starting our new ledger card on that date because we cleared our inventory. So again, we can see the information. So what we can do is we can look at our new quantity on hand here. And we see that we did a physical. We reset the ledger card for our physical. So let's recap what we've seen and what we've done in FACTS. If we go into, from our main menu, we're going to go into inventory control. We go into file maintenance and frequent file maintenance, and our static controls. We can set up the defaults for our physical inventory. In this case, the physical inventory, we have the option of running it by item, by alpha, by the vendor, by the item class defined for that item, by the location, which is our bin location, and also by the movement class. So we can set these up however we wish. We're going to stay with the location. Items include, we have the option of doing the primary location only in the location range we chose for all locations in that range. Remember, in FACTS, we can have a bin location and we can have the main bin location and sub-bin locations along with it. Here, what do we want to look at? We want to look at the on-hand quantity or the available. We're choosing the on-hand quantity. Count physical exceptions only. No, we're going to go ahead and count everything. So that's our setup here, and that was in our file maintenance, in frequent file maintenance, and in our static controls. Then now let's go back to our inventory control menu. Let's go to our physical inventory. And here we have a few things. The first one is to print our count sheets. As we saw, we can print count sheets, and from there, we can then capture our quantities. We can clear the capture quantity if we want to stop and start the process again. And we can enter counts and see our discrepancy report. Remember, the count sheet, we can do a couple things with that. Again, our default here is location. So we're going to go by bin location. We can enter our beginning bin locations. We can look at our types if we're looking at stock and non-stocked items. The warehouse we're working with warehouse 01. What we want to print on the count sheets, we're going to print the first description. A cutoff date, if we want to put a cutoff date, we're using the system date here. Here, if we want to print the on-hand, and how many blank lines we want to skip in between. And typically, this is usually done twice. It's printed, and we'll put one line here just to see. Normally, we would print it without the on-hand for the people actually in the warehouse who's going to take the quantity. You can see here what we've done is we've skipped the line in between, and we do not have the actual on-hand quantity. We also noticed the first demonstration we did, we picked items that were in bin A47 to A45. So you can see that those items are no longer on here because we've counted those and we had that date. So we set those items to be counted, so they're not going to come up again. Our default was 90 days on the count. So they'll come up a second time. So here we'll do, again, we'll just do an example of two. We'll take bin B60 to bin B67. We're just going to look at these two items. And let's run the report the other way. Here we can capture our quantity at this moment. Choose not to right now. We didn't capture it. Let's go back in. So we're going to say B60 to B67. And here we're going to show the on-hand, and we will not skip a line. So again, you can see that the two items that are involved, we're dealing with items I-138 and 111. We can see here now that we actually have the on-hand. We have no inventory on these two, so we're going to go ahead and add some inventory. You can capture the count now if you wish. I'm going to go ahead and capture it. We recommend you capture the count when you print, because you're typically going to do you don't want to lag and you don't want to be selling in between. If not, you can go to capture quantities here. You can capture the quantities here, again, by putting the same information in. If you need to clear, you can actually go here and clear the capture quantities, basically start again if we needed to. And here's where we actually enter the counts. So you can see here that we have two items. We can look at, again, all items or non-stock or stock, depending on how we want to count this. Our first item, I-138, comes up. We can see the capture quantity is 0. We're going to go ahead and we're going to say that we counted 5. We can see our next item come up, I-111. You can see the capture quantity was also 0, and we're going to put 10 here. So now we're done. We've captured our quantities for those two. We have now a discrepancy report that we recommend we run before we update. So we're going to run our discrepancy report. It's going to show differences. And again, we can do a couple of things. We can run it for only the discrepancies, or we can run it for all the items. There may be items that the on-hand was accurate. So that the account, if there was 10 on hand and we counted 10 and we entered 10, so the counts are the same. There's no discrepancies. We may want to see both on the report. We're going to go ahead and process the records. And you can see here that we have our items here. We can see our physical, what we counted, what was captured was 0, and then our discrepancy is going to be this amount. It's going to show you the discrepancy costs, information within the system, what's going to affect the quantities. And then we run our update. So when we're ready, we can run the update program. Again, it's just letting us know we should run the discrepancy report first. I'm going to click OK, and we're going to say yes to update. And we're going to click OK, and we're going to process the records, and we'll see 2 records were updated to have our information. So if we go to item inquiry, and we go to our items inquiry, and we call up item 138, we can see here we now have 5 on hand. If we look at our ledger card is going to begin with this physical inventory count, and we're going to continue from there. So what the program allows you to do is set up for a physical. This is typically done on a yearly basis for end of year. Again, the information that is entered is under inventory control, the physical inventory. The key is to do the capture quantities, as we discussed before. You want to, when you actually take the physical, it'd be nice not to have any business processes going on. A lot of times we can do a count on a weekend or when we're off, but we can't afford to keep the business down for several days to actually enter the information in. So what we do is we capture the quantity, and then when we capture the quantity and we actually do the update, FACTS will look at the net effect. So in an example of when we go to take the count, let's say we had 10 on hand and we counted 9, but it took us 3 days to get all the information in and double check everything. So when we got all the information in, we had sold 3. So our inventory now is 7. If we didn't capture, what would happen was when I go to update, I would enter 9 as the quantity, which is inaccurate because I really should have 6 because I started with 9 and I sold 3, even though FACTS had 10. So what FACTS will do was capture quantity is that when I go in and I put my capture quantity of, I put my physical count quantity of 9, it'll subtract that from the captured quantity. So there's been a change of 1. So now it'll go to the inventory I have on hand, which is 7, and change the 7 to a 6. So that's how the capture quantity is very important to run this. And then you could enter your counts, run your discrepancies, and then update. That concludes today's session on Infor FACTS is physical inventory. This webinar is being recorded. This will be available on our website. You can visit us at www.michellgroup.com to view this, as well as other webinars in our Michell University for Infor FACTS. We thank you for your time.